Hello and welcome to 101 Interviews About Zoology. Just kidding, you guys. This is Zoology 101.
Hi, I'm Justin Marie Butler.
And my name is Alice McGaffey.
And today we're going to be interviewing different people around the world and asking them what they think and know about evolution, and then explaining what we know.
Specifically, we're going to be focusing on the different aspects of descent with modification, including natural, artificial, and sexual selection,
mutations in new species,
genetic flow and genetic drift,
and survival of the fittest versus survival of the good enough.
Yeah, I think that's about it. To start off, I think a solid definition of what we think evolution is would be a good basis for everything we're going to be talking about today.
Our simple definition of evolution is a change in population from generation to generation because of changes like mutations, genetic drift, natural selection, fitness, and many other components.
Exactly. Now we're going to show you some of the many different ideas that people have about evolution and explain to you the way it really works.
The first person we talked to was a high school biology student from Scotland about different kinds of species. She really knew what she was talking about. Real quickly first, let me just tell you what species are. Species are a group of individuals with distinct and similar characteristics in common with each other. It's that easy. Now let's see what Jeannie had to say.
Well, I think that new species can be created by different mutations and changes being made in sex cells and then passed down through each generation. Changes in their environment also cause different mutations and adaptations to which the animals keep in order to survive. And that's all I know.
Thanks, Jeannie, that's great. Now to our next topic, natural selection.
Natural selection is the idea that creatures with traits that help them out in their environment are going to survive the longest and reproduce more. I interviewed a university's professor of natural sciences about natural selection and what Darwin had to do with it.
Darwin's idea of natural selection is best known through his study of the Galapagos finches. These were first collected by Charles Darwin on the Galapagos Islands during the second voyage of the Beagle. The most important differences between species are in the size and shape of their beaks, and the beaks are highly adapted to different food sources. Darwin himself said, "Seeing this gradation and diversity of structure in one small, intimately related group of birds, one might really fancy that from an original paucity of birds in this archipelago, one species had been taken and modified for different ends."
I see. Could you give an example for us?
Well, the animals best suited for their environment are going to survive and reproduce the most. For example, if you had squirrels with tails and squirrels without tails, which would be best adapted to having to run up trees and keeping balance?
I can only assume that it'd be the squirrels with tails.
Exactly. Therefore, those squirrels will survive the longest, reproduce more often, and that trait of having a tail will quickly spread throughout the population.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
His information was spot on, too.
It was.
Now we're moving on to sexual selection. Sexual selection can be defined as when one animal chooses another animal as its partner based on specific features or because competition between members of the population leaves only the traits of those who succeed. To better understand this, we have a researcher from Alabama on line 1. Cover it well, Miss Keller.
I'll surely try, Justin. You see, I've been working on a project which is testing the more instinctual part of when people select partners for themselves. You see, I've discovered that when a lady gets a whiff of her little man friend and it turns her on, it means that they're genetically different from each other. The sexier a man's smell is to a lady, then the more genetically different they are. It's something that's built into us ladies to help us select partners that aren't going to give our children them nasty genetic diseases. It's a scientific explanation for sexual selection.
Okay, Miss Keller. I think we get the idea.
Yeah.
Now I think we should talk about artificial selection.
That sounds good, Justin. Artificial selection is the process in which humans select certain wanted traits and then breed animals or plants to produce those traits in the next generation. To demonstrate this, we talked to a dog breeder from sunny California. So, Mr. Bodie, how do you select the traits you want in dogs?
Alright, it works like this. When we find a trait we like, we will breed that dog with another like it, so that their offspring will also have that characteristic.
But what do you do with the puppies that don't have that specific trait?
Well, you know how it goes. Some like to do it the old-fashioned way. Put them in a sack, throw them in the river. I myself prefer to let my imagination run wild. You know, it's kind of funny when we feed the dogs to their own kind.
That's disgusting.
Well, you know, the ones that have been put through the meat grinder. Well, we have a saying around here. If anyone gets in your way or makes you mad, I just tell them, crush them like puppies.
Oh my, that's quite enough of that. Well, I had tried to interview an Indian man on the subject of mutations, but it didn't work out so well. Let me show...
Just play the tape.
Yeah, okay, I'll just play the tape for them. Let's see.
So when people ask me where I am from originally, I will tell them Bakersfield, but that is not fairly true. And then they will say, well, where are you really from originally? And I will say Minnesota. But then they say, no, aren't you from India? And I will say, well, of course I am from India, but I am not from India. My parents are from India because I am from Bakersfield. But my parents were from Minnesota, but my great ancestors were from India. And they will be like so confused and not what is going on because I talk so fast because I am Indian.
Yeah, so as you can see, we wouldn't have gotten much out of that.
No, we wouldn't.
So I think I'll just explain mutations to you using simple definitions. Our genes are made of the letters A, T, C, and G in different arrangements of 3 called codons. Now, mutations happen in these codons, and there are, I believe, 5 different kinds of mutations.
Yes, there are.
There's, first of all, a nonsense mutation. A nonsense mutation is when a letter is replaced that creates a stop codon, so that that gene just stops. A missense mutation is when a letter in a codon is changed and it creates a completely different kind of amino acid.
Mm-hmm.
And then a
Silent mutation.
Oh,
Silent mutation
thank you.
is when the letter changes, but it doesn't affect the amino acid at all, so it's the same thing.
Exactly. And then there are frame shift mutations, which basically you insert or delete a letter, which is going to change every codon.
Exactly.
So now we're going to talk about gene flow, but to explain it, we thought it'd be best to interview a germ freak. So, you know a lot about germs, is that right?
Yeah, but only because they totally freak me out, like, duh!
Well, what do you know about how they spread?
Well, let's see. Take a cold virus, for example. It goes around to everybody all year long, and people build up immunity to it. So then those sneaky little boogers mutate so they can infect everyone all over again. It's completely, absolutely, most horrifically disgusting.
You know, that's really similar to how gene flow works. A certain mutation spreads through a population until the majority of the population has the virus with that trait. But if another mutation takes place that works even better than before, then that trait will spread. It's the same way that viruses change and spread from person to person.
That's nice. I don't care. I just don't want to catch it. Hello?
Well, speaking of colds, we just got a call from a lady, a real tissue specialist from New York, with a never-ending cold. And how are you this evening, Miss Adelaide? Miss Adelaide?
Well, I've been feeling a little sickly for the past few years, and my nose is running, and I just can't.
So what do you know about genetic drift, Miss Adelaide? Like genetic wipeout?
Wipeout? Not like wiping noses, I'm assuming. Oh, genetic wipeout. Well, I have an example I could use.
That's perfect.
Well, assume there's 2 boxes of tissues on the table, one with blue tissue and one with pink, just sitting there. But a person with a cold comes along, a person like me, so it's going to be a catastrophe for one of those little boxes. Let's say I pick the pink tissues because they're closer, and pink just happens to be my favorite color, you know. So pretty soon, there's going to be no more pink tissues and only blue ones left. And that's your wipeout, literally.
All right, thank you, Miss Adelaide.
Now on to our very last topic, the survival of the fittest versus survival of the good enough. We have a very special treat, an interview with Steve Irwin. Let's see what the crocodile hunter had to say.
One of the largest and most fascinating creatures down here is the Australian saltwater crocodile. These crocs are big, fast, mean, and sometimes cranky. These crocs come in a variety of sizes. An adult croc can be ginormous. Crikey, mate. Now, just because a croc is smaller than another one doesn't mean it's not going to survive. A croc doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest, meanest, or fastest of all the others to catch its prey. This is an example of the survival of the good enough. Now that's your fair dinkum Steve-O lesson. See ya!
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our show of Zoology 101.
Join us next week for
Shakespeare 101. See you then.
That's all, folks.
So, you know about...
So you blah 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 blah. So you blah blah blah.